Look what Daddy dragged in from whatever trailer park she crawled out of. Damon Pierce's voice cuts through the morning air like a serrated knife, dripping with the kind of casual cruelty that money can buy and privilege can perfect. Fresh meat for the grinder. And she even dressed up special for us. 17-year-old Iris Calloway sits motionless in the back of school bus number 47. Her pale blue eyes fixed on the suburban landscape, rolling past her window while her tormentor's words wash over her like poison rain. Her platinum blonde hair is braided down her back with military precision. Her wire-rimmed glasses reflect the morning sun, and her vintage navy dress whispers against her knees with each bump in the road. To everyone watching, she appears to be just another quiet girl absorbing another routine humiliation. But beneath the worn vinyl of her seat, two fingers tap out a rhythm that would chill the blood of anyone who understood its meaning. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, tap, tap. The code is older than smartphones. Older than the internet. Older than the comfortable suburban world that surrounds them. SOSOS SOS. Not a call for help, but something far more dangerous. A countdown to disaster. Behind Damon, 18-year-old Caleb Morrison adjusts. His expensive camera with the practiced movements of someone who has documented cruelty so often it has become art. His sharp features carry the smug satisfaction of a predator who knows the hunt is about to begin. While his designer clothes scream family money and legal immunity, these two have perfected their partnership through years of systematic destruction, turning bullying into a science and recording everything for posterity and blackmail. The scene fractures like broken glass, revealing the same yellow bus sitting in the district depot 3 hours later. Emergency lights strobe across its motionless frame, while investigators catalog evidence that will rewrite everything anyone thought they knew about quiet girls and protective fathers. The emergency exit window bears spiderweb cracks radiating from a single impact point. Dark stains streak down the glass in patterns too thick to be rain and too red to be rust. And the door hangs open like a metal scream frozen in time. But that moment lives in the future, waiting to be born from the collision of arrogance and training, privilege and preparation, casual cruelty and calculated response. For now, the morning sun still shines through clean windows while predators circle their prey blissfully, unaware that they have chosen the wrong victim on the wrong day, in front of the wrong father. Frank Calloway adjusts his rearview mirror and watches his daughter's reflection with eyes that have seen war zones and classified operations, though his passengers only know him as the new bus driver who needs the job. At 45, his weathered hands grip the steering wheel with the same steady control they once used to guide helicopter gunships through hostile territory, and his casual uniform hides muscles hardened by decades of combat training. The transition from Delta Force operative to school transportation has been jarring, like switching from a sniper rifle to a water pistol. But some battles require different weapons entirely. His radio crackles with routine dispatcher chatter while the real action unfolds in the seats behind him. Each word captured by recording equipment that his passengers don't know exists. 23 years of military service taught him to document everything, trust no one completely, and prepare for conflicts that civilians couldn't imagine. Today's lesson would prove more valuable than any medal or combination he had ever earned. If you're already feeling your blood pressure spike, listening to these rich kids tear into someone who just wants to get to school safely, hit that like and subscribe button because this story is about to explode in ways that will leave you cheering and questioning everything you think you know about underestimating the quiet ones. Maya Santos grips her backpack straps until her knuckles turn bone white, recognizing the familiar pattern that always ends the same way. The 16-year-old has witnessed this exact scenario play out dozens of times, always with the same devastating conclusion. The quiet kid gets systematically destroyed over weeks or months until they either transfer schools, sink into depression, or end up in situations that make local news for all the wrong reasons. Her dark curls frame a face that has learned to master selective blindness ASA survival mechanism. But something about this morning feels different. The new girl isn't showing any of the usual signs of fear or submission that mark easy prey. If anything, she seems almost relaxed, like someone waiting for a performance to begin, rather than someone caught center stage in a nightmare. Ma's brother returned from his army deployment with that same kind of steady calm, the kind that suggested explosions were more familiar than frightening, and she had learned to recognize when situations were about to turn lethal. Damon slides into the seat directly behind Iris with the casual violence of someone who has never been told no by anyone who mattered. His 6'2" frame towers over her smaller form while His knee presses into the back of her seat with deliberate aggression designed to establish dominance without crossing legal lines that might bring consequences his father's lawyers couldn't handle. Every movement screams entitlement backed by generational wealth and social immunity. "I'm talking to you, scholarship girl," he continues, his voice carrying the smooth confidence of someone who has weaponized privilege into an art form. "It's rude to ignore people when they're trying to be friendly. Didn't your daddy teach you manners? Or was he too busy picking up trash to bother with parenting?" The calculated cruelty hits its mark with surgical precision. Other students develop sudden cases of selective deafness, while Caleb's camera captures every angle of what promises Toby another masterpiece of systematic destruction. The word friendly drips with the same sincerity as a shark's smile, carrying enough poison to destroy reputations, crush dreams, and break spirits that have already been cracked by life's earlier blows. Iris finally turns in her seat, her pale blue eyes meeting Damon's dark ones with a steadiness that makes him blink first despite his size advantage. When she speaks, her voice carries the honey draw of rural Georgia. Each word carefully chosen and gently delivered, like someone afraid of breaking something fragile with excessive force. "I apologize for not responding immediately. I was concentrating on something that required my full attention." Her fingers resume their tapping against the seat, but now Damon can see the movement. To him, it looks like nervous fidgeting, the kind of unconscious tell that predators live for. He has no idea she is communicating with someone who could end his existence without breaking a sweat or losing a minute of sleep. Concentrating on what? Caleb leans forward with his camera, sensing the beginning of something worth recording for their private collection of destroyed lives. Planning your next food stamp application, figuring out which dumpster to hit for your next outfit. Or maybe practicing your apology speech for when you inevitably disappoint everyone who made the mistake of believing in you. The cruel laughter from other students feels like acid thrown on an open wound, burning through any pretense of civility or basic human decency. But Iris's expression never changes. Her tapping never stops, and her voice remains steady as a heartbeat when she responds with words that will haunt Damon Pierce for whatever time he has left on this earth. "Actually, I was thinking about patterns and behavioral psychology, how bullies always reveal their deepest insecurities through their choice of targets and tactics. It's fascinating from a clinical perspective." She pauses, tilting her head slightly like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. For instance, someone who attacks appearances typically struggles with body image issues stemming from never earning approval from parental figures. Someone who mocks financial status usually comes from generational money they didn't earn and secretly fear losing to more capable competitors. Thebus goes silent except for the rumble of the diesel engine and the soft, rhythmic tapping that has become the soundtrack to approaching disaster. Damon's face flushes red as her word-shit targets he didn't even know existed, striking nerves that have been raw and exposed since childhood. His father's company is indeed struggling behind the facade of success. Stock prices falling while debts mount and investigators circle like vultures. His own body image issues stem from years of being called soft by a man who has never earned anything more strenuous than a dividend check or inherited position. "You think you're smart, don't you?" Damon's voice carries a new edge, sharper and more dangerous than anything that has come before. "Let me educate you about something, genius. Smart girls know when to keep their mouths shut and their opinions to themselves. They understand that intelligence without power is just another form of weakness waiting to be exploited." Frank's hands tighten on the steering wheel until the vinyl cacks under pressure. Every instinct, screaming at him to pull over immediately and end this confrontation before it crosses lines that cannot be uncrossed. But 23 years of military service has also taught him the value of patience, the wisdom of letting enemies reveal themselves completely before striking. Intervention now would only delay the inevitable, forcing this confrontation into a more private setting where backup would be minutes away instead of seconds, and recording devices wouldn't capture evidence of premeditated assault. Better to let this play out in controlled circumstances where every word and action would be preserved for prosecutors who specialized in privileged teenagers who thought money could buy immunity from consequences. Better to trust in the training he had given his daughter and the steel he had forged in her spine through years of careful preparation for exactly this kind of moment. Smart girls also recognize when they're dealing with emotional children. Having public tantrums, Iris replies, her Georgia accent making the insult sound almost maternal, like a kindergarten teacher correcting a disruptive student. They understand that sometimes the kindest response is allowing people to exhaust themselves, rather than escalating situations that don't require escalation. The casual dismissal in her tone proves more infuriating than any screamed insult could have been, cutting through Damon's carefully constructed self-image like a blade through tissue paper. He feels something snap inside his chest, a wire that has been stretched too tight for too long, finally reaching its breaking point, and releasing years of accumulated rage and frustration into a moment that will define the rest of his shortened life. You want to see escalation? His voice drops to the register that makes other students press themselves against windows and pray to become invisible. The tone that has preceded every truly vicious assault in his repertoire. Let me show you what happens to smart girls who don't know their place in the natural order of things. He stands up suddenly, his frame towering over Iris's seat, while his shadow falls across her like a threat made manifest in flesh and bone. The other passengers hold their breath, while Maya Santos finds herself leaning forward, despite every survival instinct telling her to look away and pretend this isn't happening. Years of documenting these encounters has taught her to recognize the moment when casual cruelty transforms into something far more dangerous. Iris looks up at Damon without flinching, her neck craning back to meet his gaze with the same casual interest she might show a museum exhibit or mildly interesting documentary. Her tapping has stopped completely, but her hands remain perfectly still, resting on her knees in a posture that appears relaxed, but is actually a combat stance disguised as submission. "I know exactly where my place is," she says quietly, her voice carrying undertones that make Caleb's camera shake in suddenly unsteady hands. "The question is whether you understand where yours is." Damon laughs, but the sound holds no humor, only the hollow echo of someone who has never been challenged by anything more dangerous than a difficult math test or disappointed parent. "My place is wherever I want it to be. My family owns half this town, including the school board that signs your daddy's worthless paycheck. My place is making sure little girls like you understand the natural order of things before you get ideas above your station." He reaches down and grabs a strand of Iris's carefully braided hair, twisting it around his fingers with casual cruelty, designed to humiliate without leaving marks that might bring legal consequences his father's lawyers couldn't handle. The gesture establishes physical dominance while maintaining plausible deniability, a technique perfected through years of systematic abuse disguised as adolescent pranks. "This is what smart girls with smart mouths get," he whispers, pulling just hard enough to tilt her head back and force her to meet his eyes. "They get reminded that all the brainpower in the world doesn't matter when you're small and weak and alone against people who actually matter." The bus continues its route through tree-lined suburbs where manicured lawns hide family secrets and white picket fences conceal generational damage while a small war begins. In the back seats that will redefine everything anyone thought they knew about victims and predators. Frank's radio crackles with routine dispatcher chatter about traffic delays and weather conditions, while his daughter faces the kind of moment that separates survivors from casualties. In his mirror, he can see the perfect stillness that has settled over Iris, the kind of calm that comes just before storms destroy everything in their path. Her breathing remains steady, her posture unchanged, but something fundamental has shifted in the atmosphere around her. The air itself seems to thicken with potential energy, like the moment before lightning strikes when every hair stands on end and animals flee to safety. Maya Santos feels tears stinging her eyes as she watches another quiet girl about to be broken by the machine that chews up anyone who doesn't fit its narrow definitions of acceptable behavior. She thinks about her brother's warnings when he returned from deployment, his explanations about recognizing when situations were about to turn deadly, through subtle changes in body language and environmental pressure. When someone goes completely still like that, he had told her during one of their late-night conversations about survival in hostile territory, either they're about to die or they're about to kill. And if you know what to look for, Smart Money says it's not the first option. Iris's voice cuts through the tension like a surgical instrument through infected tissue. Still soft, still honey-sweet, but carrying something underneath that makes Caleb's expensive camera shake in hands that have never trembled before this moment. "Damon," she says, her Georgia drawl stretching his name into something almost musical. "I need you to let go of my hair right now. Or what?" He twists the strand tighter while his other hand reaches for her shoulder, preparing to establish complete physical control over someone he has already mentally categorized as conquered territory. "What are you going to do about it, scholarship girl? Cry, scream, tell the teacher, file a complaint with Daddy's union, or I'm going to show you what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness." The tapping has stopped completely, replaced by a silence so absolute it seems to swallow sound itself. The gentle girl with wire-rimmed glasses and vintage dresses has gone perfectly, utterly still, in a way that triggers primitive alarm systems in everyone who witnesses it. And in that stillness, Maya Santos finally understands what she's actually been seeing for the past 20 minutes. Iris Calloway isn't a victim waiting to be broken by the machine of systematic cruelty that defines their social ecosystem. She isn't prey disguised as politeness or weakness wrapped in wire-rimmed glasses and vintage dresses. She is something far more dangerous than anyone in this bus could possibly imagine. Something that has been hidden behind careful camouflage and deliberate misdirection until this exact moment when concealment is no longer necessary or advisable. She is a weapon waiting to be triggered by someone stupid enough to mistake preparation for passivity. And Damon Pierce, in his infinite arrogance and complete ignorance of the forces he has chosen to challenge, has just pulled the pin on a grenade disguised as a schoolgirl. Watching her sit there so calm while he's grabbing her hair and threatening her. What would you do in that exact moment? Would you speak up knowing it might make you the next target? Stay silent and hope it ends soon, or try to help somehow. Comment below and tell me your honest answer. Because what happens next is going to challenge everything you think you know about quiet girls and the fathers who raised them to never be victims. The world holds its breath for exactly 3 heartbeats before Damon Pierce makes the worst decision of his 18 years on Earth. Instead of releasing Iris's hair and stepping back like any creature with functional survival instincts, he tightens his grip and uses his other hand to grab her shoulder, preparing to physically drag her from the seat that has become ground zero for a confrontation that will redefine everything. Everyone thought they knew about power dynamics and consequence. Nobody tells me what to do on my bus, Hesners. His voice carrying the kind of entitled fury that has never encountered genuine resistance, especially not some welfare case who thinks reading books makes her special. Caleb's camera captures the moment when Damon's fingers dig into Iris's shoulder with enough force to leave bruises. The exact second when casual bullying transforms into criminal assault with video evidence that will later make prosecutors smile like wolves scenting blood. Other students press themselves against windows and seatbacks, recognizing on some primitive level that they are about to witness something that will haunt their dreams for years to come. Maya Santos watches in horrified fascination as Iris's head tilts back from the hair pulling, her pale blue eyes meeting Damon's dark ones with a steadiness that defies physics and psychology. No victim should look that calm while being physically assaulted by someone twice their size. Twice size. No prey should display that kind of predatory focus while being cornered by apex predators who have never lost a hunt. Frank Calloway's hand moves to the radio mounted on his dashboard. But instead of calling for backup, he activates the emergency broadcast system that will transmit everything happening in his bus directly to district headquarters, the local police department, and the school administration simultaneously. His daughter had asked for exactly 60 seconds to handle this situation herself, and he intended to give her that time while ensuring that every moment would be preserved in digital clarity for the legal proceedings that would follow. The silence stretches like a drawn bowstring until Iris speaks again, her Georgia drawl as soft and sweet as honey poured over broken glass. Damon, this is your final warning. Remove your hands from my person immediately, or I will be forced to defend myself using reasonable force as authorized by state self-defense statutes. Listen to this. Damon laughs, the sound echoing through the bus like breaking bones. Little princess thinks she's a lawyer now. Let me teach you about real law. The kind that matters when daddy's check clears and mommy's connections make phone calls. He yanks harder on her hair while simultaneously attempting to lift her from the seat by her shoulder, crossing the line from assault into attempted kidnapping. While Caleb's camera documents every detail for posterity, the other students watch in stunned silence as privilege and entitlement collide, head first with training and preparation in a confrontation that will be analyzed by law enforcement professionals for decades to come. What happens next unfolds with such lightning precision that Caleb's expensive camera can barely capture the individual movements. Iris's left hand moves with surgical accuracy to Damon's wrist, her fingers finding pressure points that Frank had taught her during weekend training sessions disguised as father-daughter bonding time. The technique is called a compliance hold, designed to cause immediate and overwhelming pain without permanent damage, forcing attackers to release their grip while creating opportunities for escape or counterattack. Damon's scream of shock and agony cuts through the morning air like a fire alarm, his hand releasing her hair as if it had suddenly burst into flames. But Iris isn't finished with her demonstration of the consequences that await those who mistake kindness for weakness. Her right elbow drives backward into his solar plexus with precisely calculated force-targeting nerve clusters that will disable him, without causing injuries that might complicate legal proceedings. The 6'2" athlete who moments ago towered over her like a conquering giant suddenly finds himself doubled over and gasping for breath that won't come. His diaphragm spasming from the impact while his oxygen-starved brain tries to process how someone half his size had transformed into a living weapon in the space between one heartbeat and then next. Caleb drops his camera in shock and lurches forward to help his friend, but Iris is already turning in her seat with movements that flow like water and strike like lightning. Her palm meets his advancing chest with a technique called a deflection strike, redirecting his momentum while applying just enough force to send him stumbling backward into the seat behind him, where he lands in a tangle of limbs and expensive electronics. "What the hell?" May Santos whispers, her voice barely audible over the sound of Damon's labored breathing and Caleb's equipment clattering across the floor. "What the actual hell just happened?" Frank's eyes meet his daughter's reflection in the rearview mirror, and for just a moment the proud father overshadows the concerned citizen, who should probably be stopping this confrontation before it escalates further. Iris had executed a perfect defensive sequence, using minimal force to neutralize two attackers while staying well within the legal boundaries of justified self-defense. Every movement had been textbook perfect. Every technique applied with surgical precision. Every decision calculated to protect herself while preserving her legal standing. "Breathe slowly through your nose," Iris tells Damon, her voice returning to its earlier gentleness as if the past 30 seconds of violence had been nothing more than a minor interruption in an otherwise pleasant conversation. The paralysis will fade in approximately 90 seconds if you don't panic and hyperventilate, Damon gasps, his face pale and sweaty as his nervous system tries torboot itself. "You psychotic freak? I'm going to destroy you for this. My father will have you arrested, expelled, and thrown in juvenile detention until you're old enough for real prison." Actually, Frank's voice cuts through the chaos with the calm authority of someone who has commanded troops in combat zones. "You're going to sit down, shut up, and wait for the police to arrive so they can review the video evidence of you committing assault and battery against a minor." The bus lurches to a stop in the school parking lot where red and blue lights are already flashing, called by the automatic alert system that activates whenever the emergency broadcast function transmits footage of criminal activity. Principal Robertson stands beside two patrol cars with an expression of someone who has just watched their comfortable world explode into complications that will require lawyers, investigators, and crisis management specialists. Officer Martinez approaches the bus with her hand resting on her weapon, though her body language suggests professional caution rather than immediate threat assessment. Behind her, Officer Chen carries equipment for documenting crime scenes while maintaining the kind of neutral expression that police officers perfect when dealing with wealthy families who believe money can erase evidence. "Everyone remains seated until we sort this out," Officer Martinez announces as she boards the bus, her eyes immediately cataloging the scene. Damon hunched over in obvious distress, Caleb tangled in a seat with electronic equipment scattered around him, and a small blonde girl sitting calmly as if nothing unusual had occurred. "We're going to review the video footage and take statements from everyone involved. This is ridiculous." Damon manages to wheeze, his breathing finally returning to something approaching normal. "That psycho attacked me for no reason. I was just talking to her and she went completely crazy. Check my family's donations to the Police Benevolent Fund before you start taking sides." Officer Chen's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes that suggests he has dealt with entitled teenagers and their enablers before. We'll let the video speak for itself. District policy requires that all incidents involving physical contact be investigated regardless of family connections or community standing. The footage plays on Officer Martinez's tablet with crystal clear audio and high-definition video that captures every word, every gesture, every moment of escalation from verbal harassment to physical assault to justified self-defense. Damon's face grows progressively paler as he watches himself grab Iris's hair, threaten her with social destruction, and attempt to physically remove her from her seat while she issues clear warnings and requests for him to stop. "Young lady," Officer Martinez addresses Iris with the kind of respect that most adults reserve for fellow professionals. "Can you walk me through your decision-making process during this incident?" "Certainly, officer." I attempted de-escalation through verbal warnings and requests for the harassment to cease. When the subject escalated to physical assault by grabbing my hair and shoulder, I defended myself using minimal necessary force as taught in civilian self-defense courses. I targeted pressure points and nerve clusters to disable rather than injure, ensuring that my response remained proportional to the threat level. Her clinical description of the encounter sounds like testimony from a trained security professional rather than a 17-year-old girl. And Officer Chen's eyebrows rise slightly as he recognizes the precise language of someone who has been thoroughly educated in use of force protocols. "And where exactly did you learn these civilian self-defense courses?" he asks, his tone carefully neutral. Frank steps forward with the bearing of someone who has spent decades taking responsibility for difficult situations. "I taught her Officer Frank Calloway, retired Delta Force, currently employed as a school bus driver. I believe every young woman should know how to protect herself, especially when authority figures can't always be present to intervene." The atmosphere in the bus shifts as both officers reassess the situation, with the new understanding that they are dealing with a trained combatant rather than a lucky amateur. Military credentials carry weight in law enforcement. Circles and Frank's service record would be accessible within minutes through departmental databases that track veterans in civilian occupations. "Mr. Pierce?" Officer Martinez addresses Damon with considerably less warmth than she had shown Iris. "You're being charged with assault and battery, harassment, and attempted unlawful restraint. Your accomplice will face charges related to conspiracy and creating a hostile environment. Given that everything was recorded, I strongly suggest you contact your family's attorney rather than continuing to make statements that will be used against you in court." Principal Robertson's face has taken on the grayish pour of someone calculating the publicity nightmare that will engulf his institution once this footage reaches social media and local news outlets. Wealthy donors who send their children to prestigious schools expect those institutions to protect their offspring from consequences, not deliver them to police officers with video evidence of criminal behavior. "Officer Martinez," he begins carefully. "Perhaps we could handle this administratively rather than involving the criminal justice system. These are good kids from respected families who simply let a disagreement get out of hand." Principal Robertson. Frank's voice carries the steel of someone who has seen what happens when institutions protect predators at the expense of victims. "My daughter was physically assaulted while other students watched and did nothing. This isn't a disagreement that got out of hand. This is a criminal act captured on video with multiple witnesses. Administrative handling is no longer an option." Maya Santos finally finds her voice, though it shakes with emotion as she speaks. "I saw the whole thing. They've been doing this to kids for years, and everyone just looks the other way because their families have money. Someone finally stood up to them, and now you want to protect them instead of her." Officer Chen looks around the bus at the other students, noting their body language and expressions of suppressed relief mixed with lingering fear. "Anyone else want to make a statement about ongoing harassment or bullying involving these individuals?" Hands begin to rise slowly throughout the bus as students realize that the protective shield of wealth and privilege has finally developed cracks large enough for justice to seep through. Stories pour out about destroyed homework, social media harassment, orchestrated humiliation campaigns, and systematic cruelty that had been tolerated because the perpetrators wrote checks that funded athletics programs and building renovations. By the time the interviews conclude, Damon Pierce and Caleb Morrison find themselves facing charges that will follow them through college applications, scholarship considerations, and background checks for the rest of their lives. Their families' lawyers will undoubtedly minimize the consequences through plea bargains and community service, but the video evidence ensures that complete exoneration is impossible. However, justice rarely arrives without demanding payment from everyone involved, including those who fought for it. Iris sits in Principal Robertson's office 3 hours later, listening to an administrator explain why zero-tolerance policies require consequences for all participants in violent incidents, regardless of fault or circumstance. "Ms. Calloway, while we understand that you were defending yourself, school policy prohibits physical violence under any circumstances. I'm afraid we have no choice but to suspend you for 3 days, pending a full investigation by the district's disciplinary committee." Frank's jaw tightens with carefully controlled anger as he watches his daughter pay the price for refusing to be a victim. So students who defend themselves face the same punishment as students who commit assault. That's the lesson you want to teach. "Mr. Calloway, I sympathize with your position, but rules exist for a reason. We cannot make exceptions based on circumstances, or the entire disciplinary system becomes meaningless." The disciplinary system is already meaningless if it protects attackers and punishes victims, Frank replies, his voice carrying decades of frustration with bureaucracies that prioritize paperwork over people. But I understand that you have policies to follow, even when those policies are morally bankrupt. As they walk toward the parking lot where Frank's truck waits, Iris breaks the silence that has stretched between them since leaving the principal's office. Are you disappointed in me? Frank stops walking and turns to face his daughter, his weathered hands resting on her shoulders with infinite gentleness. Disappointed. Iris, I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life. You handled an impossible situation with grace, courage, and perfect technical execution. The fact that cowards and bureaucrats want to punish you for refusing to be a victim only proves how corrupt the system has become. But I could have handled it differently. Maybe if I had just ignored them or moved to a different seat, none of this would have happened. And maybe if you had submitted to their harassment, they would have moved on to someone else who couldn't defend themselves. You showed every potential victim on that bus that bullies can be stopped. That privilege doesn't grant immunity from consequences, and that sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to protect others. They drive home in comfortable silence while Frank's radio crackles with traffic updates and weather reports, the mundane concerns of a world that continues spinning despite the seismic shifts that have occurred in their small corner of it. Neither of them mentions the disciplinary hearing that will determine Iris's academic future, or the lawyers who will undoubtedly try to destroy her reputation to protect their clients, or the social media campaign that will paint her as either a hero or a villain, depending on the political leanings of the commenters. Instead, they focus on the immediate task of sorting through the belongings that Iris's mother had left behind. Boxes stored in the attic that Frank had avoided opening for the 3 years since cancer had claimed the only woman he had ever loved. Today feels like the right time to let his daughter discover the truth about the woman who'd given her life. If only she is ready to accept the responsibility that comes with that knowledge. The wooden box sits in Iris's bedroom floor like a time capsule, waiting to reveal secrets that have been buried beneath grief and protection. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that still carries the faint scent of her mother's perfume, lies a collection of military decorations that tell a story Frank had never shared with his daughter. Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart, Combat Action Badge. Badges and ribbons that speak of classified operations and classified wounds earned in service to a country that had demanded secrecy even in death. Beneath the medals, a letter written in the precise handwriting that Iris remembers from birthday cards and homework corrections. Words preserved for a moment when a father's love could no longer shield a daughter from the truth about her heritage and destiny. My dearest Iris, if you are reading this, then the time has come for you to understand who you really are and why we moved to this quiet town, where your father drives a school bus and I volunteer at the library. We didn't come here seeking peace or anonymity. We came here because someone had to watch over the families of those who died, keeping secrets that could destroy governments and topple nations. We came here because protection is a form of service, and service is a form of love, and love sometimes requires sacrifices that none will ever understand or appreciate. The training your father has given you is not preparation for bullies or teenage harassment, though it serves that purpose well enough. It was preparation for the day when our watchers would be discovered, when our cover would be blown, when the comfortable fiction of normal life would be shattered by the reality of ongoing conflicts that most people believe ended with treaties and parades. That day is coming sooner than we hoped, my darling girl. The attack on the bus was not random teenage cruelty, but a test. A probe to determine whether Frank Calloway's daughter possessed the skills and temperament necessary for the work that awaits her. You pass that test with honors, but passing tests only qualifies you for more difficult examinations. Look in the bottom of this box beneath the false floor that your father doesn't know exists, and you will find everything you need to continue the mission that your mother died protecting, and your father has unknowingly supported through 3 years of careful surveillance disguised as mundane employment. Iris's hands shake as she locates the hidden compartment and discovers documents that rewrite everything she thought she knew about her, family's history, and her own future. Encrypted communications, financial records, photographs of people who should be dead but apparently are not, and instructions for making contact with an organization that has been waiting 17 years for Catherine Calloway's daughter to discover her true inheritance. Outside her bedroom window, the suburban street looks exactly the same as it did this morning, when the most pressing concern was whether she would make friends at her new school. But behind every normal facade, shadows move with purpose and intent that would terrify anyone naive enough to believe that wars end when newspapers stop reporting casualties. The quiet girl who defended herself on a school bus has just discovered that she is actually a weapon forged by generations of women who understood that some battles require soldiers who look like civilians. Some wars demand fighters who appear to be victims, and some forms of service require sacrifices that no one will ever acknowledge or appreciate. The encrypted files spread across her bedroom floor tell stories that would rewrite history textbooks if they ever saw daylight. Bank routing numbers for accounts that have funded resistance movements across 4 continents. Photographs of her mother standing beside world leaders who supposedly died in accidents, but apparently continued operating under assumed identities. Communication protocols for a network of female operatives, embedded in suburban communities from Seattle to Miami, each one maintaining perfect cover while monitoring threats that governments preferred to ignore rather than acknowledge. One document bears her mother's handwriting alongside coordinates that match the exact location of their current home, revealing that their move to this quiet town had nothing to do with Frank's job search and everything to do with positioning assets for a mission that had been planned before Iris was born. The Pierce family, the Morrison family, and 6 other influential households in their school district appear on a watch list marked with threat assessments and elimination protocols that make her blood run cold. Her hands shake as she processes the implications. Every casual conversation at the grocery store, every parent-teacher conference, every community event had been reconnaissance disguised as normal life. Her mother hadn't been volunteering at the library out of civic duty, but because the building housed archived documents related to a Cold War experiment that supposedly ended in 1973, but had actually evolved into something far more dangerous and widespread. The attack on the bus wasn't random teenage cruelty, but a test orchestrated by handlers who needed to verify that Catherine Calloway's daughter possessed the emotional control and tactical skills necessary for deep cover operations. Damon Pierce's family connections weren't just local wealth and privilege, but links to an international network that traded government secrets like commodities and eliminated inconvenient witnesses with the efficiency of a Fortune 500 corporation. Iris realizes with crystalline clarity that her suspension from school provides the perfect cover for her real education to begin. While administrators debate disciplinary policies and lawyers craft legal strategies, she will be learning skills that no civilian institution could teach. The encrypted phone hidden beneath her mother's medals displays a single unread message with coordinates for a training facility disguised as a private estate 40 meter outside the city limits. The weight of inherited responsibility settles across her shoulders like a mantle woven from duty and necessity. Her childhood ended the moment Damon Pierce grabbed her hair, but her real life is just beginning. The techniques Frank taught her for self-defense were merely the foundation for capabilities that would make her previous demonstration look like playground wrestling. She carefully repacks the documents and medals, leaving only the encrypted phone visible on her desk like a challenge waiting to be accepted. Tomorrow's newspaper will report the arrest of 2 privileged teenagers for assault and harassment. But the real story involves a 17-year-old girl who must choose between the safety of ignorance and the burden of truth. The former promises normally, and the latter guarantees a life where success is measured in lives saved rather than grades earned, where failure results in body counts rather than disappointed parents. Sleep comes fitfully as Iris dreams of her mother's final missions and wakes to the sound of her father making breakfast downstairs, unaware that his daughter has just inherited a war that most people believe exists only in conspiracy theories and paranoid fantasies. By evening, she will know whether she possesses the strength to carry on her mother's work, or if the family legacy will die with her refusal to take up arms, in conflicts that civilian governments lack the courage to acknowledge. Tomorrow she will return to school and face the consequences of refusing to be a victim. But tonight she will begin preparing for conflicts that will make teenage bullies seem like practice rounds for battles that will determine whether freedom survives the next century. The game is just beginning, and Iris Calloway has finally discovered the rules.